I like your background, Paul.
That's the Midvale Community Garden.
Oh,
Is this better?
Yes, I can
Oh,
hear you.
good. Oh, good.
If anybody needs any extra green beans, let me know.
okie doke.
I just cut a bunch of them for dinner. So my secret weapon is having my wife answer the phone, because if anybody's ever pledged before, they really like talking to her. So I'm free to stay dyspeptic and on mic the whole time.
And she speaks English too, most of the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Unless the caller speaks Dutch, in which case she just switches over and everything's great. I've got the Dutch in my pocket.
The Dutch audience has been secured.
Well, the guy who pledges on my show from Australia.
Really?
No!
Is one of Yolanda's ex-students.
That's amazing.
Oh yeah, his mom and dad were Irish immigrants to Australia. He got a job working on a Japanese fishing boat, learned enough Japanese, went to school, got a PhD in Japanese, and taught here briefly, but signed up to take Dutch from my wife. That's how we know him. And he went back to, the faithful listener went back to Australia, and given the time difference, he grades papers from his linguistics courses on Monday at lunchtime, which is when my show is on there. Go figure.
Wow, regular donor.
Yeah.
I'm still trying, we haven't figured out how to mail things overseas without basically wrecking our, the cost to mail a hoodie to Australia is.
Well, if it's him, if he pledged to get a hoodie, I'd pay to send it to him.
He's never pledged for anything, and I appreciate that. Oh, Elton, I love your background.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Elton.
Hi.
Hello, Elton.
Oh, hey, Amber.
This is the kind of time when you want those waves to move, Elton. I think you need a video. I think you need a video film loop.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah,
Elton?
the problem is you can never get film loops that you want, like a punch up in a bar or people working on the street or something like that. The only ones you get are like flowers waving, just nonsense like that. Or sand through an hourglass as the days of our lives.
Oh, God, I haven't heard that in a while. Teresa, is this Teresa from the jazz show?
Yes, it is. Yes, I'm having to come to you on my cell phone. My internet has been down all weekend.
Oh dear.
So
Poor
I'm
thing.
trying to conserve as much of the data here as possible. So
Yes, well you should. As well you
yeah.
should.
Nope, just didn't have a last name and wanted to make sure that I knew who was on with us. One of the new hosts of Strictly Jazz Sounds, right?
Yes, that's right.
And
Hey,
Matthew,
thanks for doing that, Teresa. You're doing great so far.
Oh, thank you. It's been
It
a
must
blast.
have been totally scary to sort of take one of
Oh,
those jazz slots, given who used to sit in it.
No, not at all.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well,
I know.
that speaks well for your sense of self.
that's great.
Wow.
I
When
know
I got
that.
my
I
first
guess-
show, I was terrified of the person I was going to quote unquote replace, because I thought there's no way I can do this. It was just. That's like when I think of my first 2 months on the air, that's overwhelmingly the emotion that comes up is like, I'm a big phony. I have no business being behind a microphone. Oh man.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a lot, and I think about that, and I think that's what's making me feel so much anxiety on the radio.
Yeah.
Is just that part, just like you say, whose shoes I'm replacing. But I'm just trying to do the best being me and where I am at.
Bravo.
With where I am in my jazz journey and trying to convey that, and WORT has such a big part of that. So I hope to convey that during the pledge drive, just, how
Cool.
WORT has really been
Well,
instrumental in helping.
if everything else fails, just dig out Bill Evans at the Village Vanguard. and
Yeah,
you'll be
right.
Just saying. Just
Never
saying.
fails.
Oh.
Okay, I just want to say if Matthew or Teresa, Matthew, do you prefer Matthew or Matt?
Oh, either's fine. No real preference.
Now you have to pick.
Okay, Matt. We'll do Matt.
Sparky.
Okay, Matt.
Sparky.
Definitely Elton has probably a few thoughts on the pressure of stepping in to a jazz show that has been filled for a long time. So I recommend, Elton, you'd be willing to talk to Teresa or Matt sometime about what it feels like to step into new shoes and how you dealt with that?
Oh yeah, sure. Anytime you guys want to get together and chat, I'd be up for it for sure.
Yeah,
Cool.
replacing Gary Alderman and Stephen Brongan and Jane, those are all just such heavy hitters that, and it's scary stepping in, but you know, I have to say, I enjoy Elton's shows as much as I enjoyed Gary's shows. There, you know, there's a different flavor and it's all good. So the scariness of stepping in, I appreciate it. So I'm going to quick say hello. And if I don't say hello to you, then for some reason you're not on our screen, which means you're probably not here anyway. But hi, Paul, Gregory, Amber, Carol, Matt, Art, there you are. Elton, Catherine, hi, Catherine, and Teresa.
Hi. I don't know if I'm having issues with getting my AirPods to work, so I may end up leaving you guys earlier just because I'm in a place where I don't want to disturb other people.
So generally, this would be a webinar on helping people who haven't pledge wrapped before or want a review of what we're specifically going to be doing for this drive. Unfortunately, I have almost no people signed up to pledge wrap. 80% of the shows between 7 in the morning and 10 at night do not have a pledge wrapper signed up for them. So we are in a very different situation than we usually are at a week out from the pledge drive. I have sent, and it's very last minute, and a form that goes over the very essential do's and don'ts, the fundraising essentials. Is it possible, Aaron, that you can put that on the screen?
I'm not logged into my email, so let me do that and give me a.
Okay. I'm going to be asking of hosts and rappers that are used to be rapping on maybe just one show to consider during this pledge drive only, rapping on someone else's show as well. Carol, you are the queen of having already done that. I'm not going to ask any more from you. You've already spread yourself lavishly and responded to many people's requests for your help in the that genre. I still would like your input when we get to the form of the essentials, because I think you're an amazing pledge wrapper and you have a style that isn't common to most hosts, in that you are very familiar with your listeners and feel a bond with WORT listeners that you convey in a special way. And I'm partly talking about the fact that you're able to say "dear listeners" with complete sincerity, and every time you say it, it makes my heart like respond and want to donate money, because it's like, you know, that I hear that sincerity and that feeling. Unfortunately, if I tried "dear listeners," it would sound completely snarky coming from me and my ability to use this. So part of what I want you guys to weigh in on is the sincerity that is necessary in fundraising. You can't, what makes it difficult is you can't assume a persona. You can't do cynical fundraising. You can't do snarky fundraising. It requires a sincerity that is difficult to me to have us drop on air while we're talking to a massive group of people, to be able to drop all of that and be sincere and genuine on air. To me, that is one of the most difficult parts of fundraising, is to allow yourself to be yourself and be vulnerable and be sincere. Do you have any thoughts on that, Carol?
Kind words. I guess the thing that has helped me is just that I've been doing this for so long. I see the same names on the thank you list over and over again, and I don't have faces for all of them, but I know a lot of the listeners and they go way back. And I think the thing is just anyone who listens a lot, anyone who pledges more than like once every 10 years, chances are they love the host. Now that sounds super corny, but like when I listen to, let's see, I can't think of an example offhand, but let's say I'm listening to,
say Bill and Bobby.
Who Cooks for You?
Who Cooks for You?
Or, just that the Real Jaguar is so different from me. The other Mr. S is so different from me, but they are so themselves. And it's like that they would come into my car or my house and share music that I wouldn't be exposed to otherwise, and share kind of what they think is an appropriate way to celebrate a Friday afternoon. We have a bond. I wouldn't call it love, but we have a special bond. And if they ask me to give money, my fingers are going to itch and I'm going to think, have I given? Could I give? Should I give? And so I think that's different for everybody, but I would suggest tapping into the shows that you like and thinking about, when you're driving around and it's like, it's been the day from hell and it's like, oh, who knew Blues Cruise would make a difference for me? It lifts my spirits, or Tropical Rhythms cheers me up in February. Whatever it is, if you can channel into that, chances are you have listeners who feel that way about your show.
So I think what you're saying right now, Carol, which I really recommend, is putting yourself in the place of the listener when you're pledge wrapping. I often talk about the shows when somebody drags me kicking and screaming out of my basement hole and says somebody hasn't shown up, you need to pledge wrap. What I identify with, since I'm not a host, is I am a big listener. And so I talk about what it's like, my experience as a listener. And Carol talks about her experience as a listener, listening to the Real Jaguar, listening to these other shows, and how it feels to have a piece of music or something that hits you directly. If there's a talk show, a topic that just, is something that is so personal or so related to something in your life. Just want to talk, when I was in high school, when I was a senior, my dad was stationed in Izmir, Turkey. It is one of the few places, because the base there is right in the community. There isn't a separate gated place. Each thing is located right within Izmir, so you're right in the community. The Turkish government would not allow us to have armed forces radio because we couldn't limit it to just the base. So everywhere else, when you're overseas, you get to listen to Armed Forces Radio. We didn't have that. It was my first time being without radio, because the Turkish radio was not, this was 1976. Their version of American disco, if you don't like American disco, you really would hate Turkish disco music, I want to say. So we didn't get radio. What we had was a jukebox in the snack bar, and that was regularly loaded with hits, but it was just like hit or miss, because we would see a title and we would have no idea what that song was. No one did. You were always putting your quarter in and just like, well, who knows what this is? But I remember sitting there and hearing Fly Like an Eagle for the first time. Somebody took a chance, put a quarter in and played Steve Miller's Fly Like an Eagle. And that whole, there probably were 40 of us in the snack bar. All of us stopped talking, stopped drinking. We all listened to that song, and there was a certain wistfulness that captured part of the experience of being like an expatriate. There's nothing in the lyrics, but the song itself has something in it that just, I don't, probably for the rest of you, the first time hearing it isn't what it is, but we were all kind of looking at each other and almost crying hearing that song.
It was the filtered white noise, I think, that did it.
Is there an explanation for what the?
That's what I think the filtered white noise that kind of opens the thing implies some broad space in which something really important and meaningful happens. But I'm a big idiot.
Well,
but I would actually say that has something to do with the effect of the song. I really do.
I appreciate that. You know, I watch some YouTube channels where they have explained things that I've been like, the emotion that is triggered because of this, and it's almost a visceral thing that's built into humans to hear it that way.
Right.
Anyway, that was a very long blah 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 thing of all the time on WORT. I'm being affected that way by you as the host. Your choices of what you choose to put on the air have very direct effects on listeners. And when you are hosting a show and talking about pledge wrapping, it's great to talk specifically about your show, but just be aware that most of our WORT listeners listen to a lot of shows and have very varied taste.
Yeah.
Anytime I see the top 3 of what people choose, and I see all of them because we're putting them in the database, I'm like, somebody who listens to Back to the Country, listens to Musica Antigua, listens to R2QE, listens to The Real Jaguar, listens, it just goes on and on. You can't compartmentalize your listeners.
Well, their medication is working.
Yes.
Susan, you're absolutely right. And looking at the people here, I think I've heard all of you on the air, actually, every single one of you. And one of the advantages that you have, I would say, partially because the first time I ever had to do fundraising, I was terrified about this. None of you as programmers have adopted the idea that irony is a permanently sustainable condition as a critic or a commentator about the work of other people. And you'd be really surprised at the sense in which personality-driven broadcasting inclines people or encourages them to do that. So for you, what I would say, at least based on what I've heard for all of you, is you all do a really good job. I mean, maybe you're all phonies and I've totally missed it, in which case you're sociopaths and I'm completely fooled. But the impression that I've had from all of you is you're sitting behind the mic because you're passionate about what you do. And 2 of the things that I started doing that have worked really well for me, and these are kind of embarrassing to say, is when you have the pledge card and they give you the 3 shows, read the 3 shows. Make that a part of your thing. Say, hey, we'd like to thank somebody, and you can do this for anonymous donors as well. You just go in and say, I'd like to thank somebody who only wishes for their generosity to be a matter of public record. They're anonymous people, but when I turn this card around and I look at the back of it, look at what's on the back. Look at the distance between those things. In a world full of radio programming that's narrowcasting or serves a kind of a programming orthodoxy or something like that, the fact that there are people like this supporting this station tells you something really important about not only who they are, but also what we're doing. So that's thing 1. Thing 2, and this is stupid as the day is long, but good Lord, does this ever work? I guess this is also kind of true for all of you also. To the extent that what you broadcast is a sort of, not genre defined, but a kind of territory. You're operating in a territory that I would assume, since you're good at what you do, is a cross between your personal comfort zone and your regard for the people that you program for, who may have suggestions about what you do. So you're kind of navigating the place you go and the white space around the outside of that. It's an opportunity to talk about why you're insane enough to do a radio show in the first place. And I would be willing to bet that every single one of you will have something to say that sounds like, I'm doing this because at some point in my life, somebody sat me down and played a bunch of music that changed my life. And in my case, it's totally stupid. That's exactly what it is. And in my case, there are the three of those 4 people are debts I can't repay, so I have to pay that forward. But so connecting on the basis of why do you love, if you can play anything you want, why play Mingus, right? Or what's your whole thing about one voice per part early music, which, by the way, is the way God intended it to be heard. I'm just saying. You have the opportunity to do that, and you don't. It's one of those things where I guess if you're really worried about talking about yourself, that's going to be tough. But you know what? If you're looking for a really stupid way to connect with an audience, tell them a personal story. Fly Like an Eagle, perfect example. Like, I was driving along, and I might as well use Bill Evans because for me, that was the case. I'm driving along listening, and somebody plays Waltz for Debbie off the Orrin Keep News, the full Village Vanguard. Scott LaFaro's bass solo comes up. I had no idea who the fuck the guy was. Literally, I'm driving down the street. I pulled the car over. I did. I was like, holy crap! What is this? And it was like, I pulled, it was obviously I was driving somewhere it was safe, but I pulled over to listen to it. And to me, it's a compelling experience that you can tell the truth to do. You don't have to be anybody you're not. Just tell somebody a stupid and possibly humiliating story about something that brought you to your knees and say, when the time came to do this show, I thought, what if I could do that for somebody else? Like, what would it be like to be the person that leads somebody else to that? That's why I do this. I'm clearly not doing it for pay, right? So, but that's those two things have worked insanely well for me, and they don't require me to act like anybody I'm not. I can also say something like, I have a feeling that when that thing was on, one person out of every 50 people looked over at the speakers and said, huh. And I was person number 51. And I pulled the car over to the side of the, you know what I mean? Like that. You can do that without being anybody you're not. Because that's why you're doing this. So those two dumbass things just have always seemed to work for me.
I'm just going to thank you. I really appreciate that, Gregory. I want to talk about, there is no need to be glib. There is no need to have any kind of canned things to resort to. There is no need for you to feel that exactly how you present yourself in fundraising, even if it's early shows, Matt and Teresa, it's okay for silence. It's okay for you to get your thoughts together on the air. What distinguishes our fundraising from so many others that I listen to, because I do listen to a lot of other community radio, and certainly Wisconsin Public Radio fundraising. And our listeners say, and our donors say, you sound real. There's nothing canned you're reading. I have been asked many times by different directors of the station to prepare canned things for you guys to read, to talk about how WORT is like the Green Bay Packers. It's owned by a community. Or WORT is like whatever. And I did these in the past, and then finally, when I first came, and I finally realized it's wrong. It's wrong to put words in the host's mouth. It's wrong to get in the way of your sincerity. One thing I do want to suggest to you that Gregory does, and I don't know if he's aware of how often he does it, is ask a question.
Oh, yes. Right. What's the last thing I played that you hated? No, seriously, this is I'm sorry, if I thought of a third thing, this would have been it, is the idea about radio, that sort of the idea that there's some kinds of radio that are explicitly set up to appeal to what you already know. It's narrowcasting, right? You've got a little box and you stay inside the box.
It's the American Top 40.
Well, the thing you try to, so then if you're really clever, the thing you try to do is you try to find something that's like a 1/16 of an inch outside the box. So in Elton's case, like, you don't play Albert Eiler. Good God, you don't play Albert Eiler, because somebody might hate Albert Eiler. Or in the case of Paul Baker's, by the way, outstanding new show. Really, really great. The thing you do is you give people the opportunity, and I don't know that you necessarily, well, I've said this on the air, but maybe you don't. You give people the opportunity, the possibility of hearing something they don't like. And then what you get to say is, look, I'm just trying to suggest what the terrain looks like. You don't have to like everything, but I think as a culture, we're really hung up on the idea of deciding what we like only by hearing what we like or something that moves a little bit away from it. But in fact, the opportunity to hear something that forces you to confront your own sensibilities and to say, oh, that bites. This is terrible, is a great thing to do for an audience, especially, and this is like the second thing to say, and I do say this out loud, the opportunity at some point later in your life to return to that and say, what the hell was I thinking when I thought Miles Davis Was on the Corner was the stupidest record I ever heard in my life? And I'll tell you that story ahead of time. I bought a Japanese press of that thing when it came out. I took it home and I listened to it. I thought it was the biggest piece of garbage I ever heard in my life, and I sold it to my roommate for 25 cents. And that was back in the days when Japanese pressings were $4.50. And the man that I sold it to is still a friend of mine like 40 years later. And you know what? He's never let me forget that. Like every damn time I talk to him, he was like, yeah, that Miles Davis On the Corner record, I still got that. And it's another jujitsu thing. You can talk to your audience and say, look, I know that what we're playing is just kind of all over the place, and some of this is not going to be music you've ever heard. Some of it's not going to be music that maybe you don't even like, but just think about the possibility of doing that. That also means you can hear the thing that changes your life. You can hear Fly Like an Eagle. Right? That's the only risk you take doing that is your time and your attention. And that's given the payback for that.
Gregory, I remember, maybe 15 years ago, there was a profile written about you and your show in the Isthmus. And I think the headline was something like, surprised by sound or startled or something. You remember that?
That's the truth.
Yeah, and it was, the whole thing was about surprise and startled.
Mm-hmm. Sure, still is. I mean, that's actually the reason I'm still doing it. It gives me, well, maybe this is true for the rest of you. Doing a program like this gives you an opportunity or gives you an excuse, especially if you're somebody who thinks it's important to be serious about everything. It gives you an excuse to listen widely. You have responsibilities to an audience. And since that's the case, if you spend all your time playing, Yes records constantly, you can certainly do that. But there might be more to it than that. So again,
Gregory, what I hear you saying, what I hear Susan saying is, do not underestimate the audience.
Yeah, their intelligence and their empathy.
Yes,
absolutely.
And when we're doing the pledge rap, we should say, I respect you, and I respect that you have big ears, and this may be a little bit abrasive, but bear with me, and I play this because I think you will appreciate it on some level.
Let me say one thing about
It's a way to say I
Gregory
trust you.
Gregory can have a challenging show for me. You play things, you're not on the level of Joanne Powers challenging, which goes way past
I don't
my
think so.
abilities, but you play more challenging things that I don't turn off the radio. I respect your taste enough to listen to them. But I will say that during a pledge drive, I hear very few of those more challenging things.
I try to temper that. I do try to temper it. You're absolutely
I do suggest that the pledge drive is not the place to have your most challenging show.
No.
I agree.
Here's a 20-minute tape of power tools and people screaming. No, sorry, that's not good. On the other hand,
look at Wisconsin Public TV. What do? It's pledge drive time.
Yeah, that's right.
James Taylor and
here's that John Fogerty special you've been waiting for. Please.
So
no.
I don't want you to trot out. This is not the time to play. If you're on a classical show, clips of all of the classical music that people don't know the name of, even though they don't know classical music at all, but they recognize the piece. I'm not asking you to do that. Please don't do that. But what I am asking is that the fact is that the longer people listen to your show during a pledge drive, the more likely they are to give.
Yeah.
The more chances you have to hit them with different messages of what might be a reason for them to support the station. Thank you, Amber. We're taping this, so if anybody wants to come back and hear all of us do this, they're welcome to. It'll be on YouTube, and I'll send the link around. So I'm not asking you to play top 40 classical or top 40 jazz or anything like that. I will ask that you consider that the longer they're on, I realize that this is part of the phenomenon of the last minute giving. For many shows, there's this sudden rush at the end of the show where it's like, why is everyone calling at the frickin' last minute? You've had 3 hours to donate, and now we're scrambling to get you on there. And it's because they've been listening for 3 hours, making up their mind about whether they're going to donate or not.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And you're finally giving them a deadline. If they've lasted with you for 2 hours or 1 hour or 3 hours while you're pledge wrapping, they really do want to give.
Mm-hmm.
They just are listening for any reason you have. Anyone who listens to a pledge drive show is looking for a reason to give to you. Almost all, not everyone, but a lot of listeners. So if you can keep them on with you, and that involves not doing your most challenging show and kind of playing the things that they might not have heard before, but based on your knowledge, they'll probably like, instead of picking something that is a little more challenging for them.
Susan, I have a question, and Gregory, thank you for kind of helping kind of us newer folks with how to go about. So what I was thinking as Gregory was talking about, when you're sharing your stories about how the music impacted you, as you have also shared, Susan, there were 2 artists that came to mind with specific stories and music that falls kind of in that safe category that I was thinking about, kind of piggybacking the story and then actually playing the song. Is that kind of how you'd advise, like, for us newer people, or does that make sense? And like kind of telling the story about the song beforehand and then playing the song after?
Well, my guess is you may very well do that as part of your regular programming, if that's something that you do, right? Here's some music from Miles Davis live at the Plug Nickel, which is like great Miles Davis record, but it's basically Miles is really sick. He's got this new band full of fantastic players, and he wants to do something really different. And the first nights at the Plug Nickel, you listen to Herbie Hancock, has no idea what he's doing. He's lost. He's totally lost. and you just basically tell the story about it, say, here's the thing, and then the next thing you play is like a really short piece from the end of the tour that quintet went on, where everybody is telepathically connected, and you've got this just really compelling thing. In Carol's case, somebody as long as I'm ranting about one voice per part, somebody who basically starts out doing very traditional performance and then switches over to that. Like, what does it mean to make that leap into the utter transparency of a single voice in a really complex polyphonic piece? That's a tremendous risk to take.
Yeah, actually, what I was thinking more so about is like, we were talking about listening to a show. I listened to a piece of music by an artist that I didn't know who it was at the time. His name was James Williams. He's a pianist who's no longer with us, but he came here actually with Richard Davis's end of the semester Black ensemble with the students that he did. And I had a chance to meet him and everything. But I fell in love with his music before I got a chance to see him live. And so that's kind of what I was meaning with that. Like, I don't want to talk about obscure things. I want to talk about a personal relationship that I have that I was able to develop, and so is that
a lot of my personal is obscure, I'm afraid, Teresa. So sorry if I confused that. But yes, I think that's exactly right. And to the extent that a part of the reason I started doing this is because I've pledge rapped with precisely like 2 people in 30 years. I've kind of never done it. So I was kind of always stuck by myself, and I thought, I'm by myself, what am I going to do? And the best thing to think about was, well, why don't I just do what I've always done and kind of talk about doing what I've always done and why what I've always done might or might not be worthy of support. That's really it. So, and since you're talking about your own experience, that's like the best thing. It's the best thing in the world, because that's the point for me anyway, at which it's hard to tamp down your own enthusiasm. When I first started dating, my mother's advice to me was, honey, when you go out with somebody, you should always try to get them, see if you can ask them about something they care about and listen to how they talk about what they care about. Because nobody's as beautiful as when they talk about what they love. And you're supposed to listen to them and think about what it would be like if they talked like that way about you.
So I want to go back to the interesting thing that I find Gregory doing, which is a lot more questions. And Teresa, what I think will fit, and if anyone else wants to weigh in with the technique, some of you might not realize you're doing it, but is to say, have you ever had a piece of music shoot you in the heart, for lack of a better way of saying it, that just stops you in your tracks? Teresa, and you can introduce this, and I'm sorry, Williams was the name?
Yeah, James Williams.
That listening to this piece, and we have a lot of musicians who listen to WORT, but I will tell you from knowing the list of the donors, most of them aren't. Most of them are people that just don't want to hear the same 40 things over and over again during a day. For a while when I was like a teenager, I was like, I think I'm psychic. I can tell what song is going to come on next while the other song is playing. I can predict the next song. Yeah, that's not psychic. That's, programming. Programming for maximum dollars. So what I want to say, Teresa, is often introducing something by allowing the listener to have that thought in their head and make that same pause. Can you think of a piece of music that just shot you in the heart, that stopped you, that had you thinking, this is so relatable to, that you had this connection to? And give a pause, breathe, let the person think of that in their head. You're connecting with them while they're doing that. So while I'm thinking of Fly Like an Eagle, when you say that, I've got probably 10 songs You know, of course, there's always the breakup song that you cried for 3 weeks to, and you kept playing, even though it was like pushing on a bad tooth, and you're like, yeah, that hurts. Oh my God, that still hurts. That tooth is really in pain. Even though you wore that tooth for a while playing that same song over and over, that's a song that no matter when you hear it, you're going to stop for a minute and think, that asshole dumped me. I cannot believe it to this day. Or whatever. So I invite you to introduce your personal thoughts. Yes, definitely talk about that and play that music, Teresa. Talk about that, but give a chance, always give a chance for the listener to have their own thought introduced into that. Or maybe I shouldn't say always, but often give that thing. I talk about sometimes what it's like to picture a Madison, a world without WORT. And a lot of times that comes up when I travel. And when I go someplace and I'm, you know, just like in a car and I'm like scrambling, like everything sounds the same. This is the McDonald's of radio. This is like and how painful that is. And ask if people have had, when you've been traveling, what do you listen to on the radio? And just pause.
I always find telling my European friends that we do something resembling experimental music from 9 p.m. in the evening until dawn on Monday morning. And now that Paul's on it, actually, we continue to do stuff like that. They're just gobsmacked. They can't believe we can get away with that. Because, of course, you have to, and then if I want to really pile it on, I say, yeah, and you know, I'm on right after the gospel show. And they're kind of like, what?
That's what.
Yeah, that's what our station is about, and yeah, it's a really compelling story, because then what you get to say is, we get to do this because of you. Exactly. I mean, it's fun to be behind the mic and all. Don't get me wrong, that's a lot of fun. But the reason that we're able to do it is because of the support of people who listen to us, who value the music that they get to hear, who value the variety of opinions. The opportunity to turn on the radio and listen to Bill Malone this is my favorite, 2 hours of music about country music about atomic testing. That is the all-time weirdest Bill Malone show I ever heard, and it was just stupefyingly great. I was alternately mouth open and laughing my butt off all the way through that show, because I just thought, how can you do that for 2 hours? Are you insane? And you just think, who else gets to do that? And after that, just saying, well, doing that is, you know, what, of course, here, take my money, please.
You're the listener, as I'm talking to you as a listener, your open mind, your desire to hear something beyond top 40 music allows us to to do tightrope shows where usually you would think, I have to do something that people are all going to approve of. But some of those shows are some of the most well-remembered, where we go out on a limb and try to do something. I'm going to say one that I don't think was completely successful, but only on WORT. Jonathan Zaroff had a Friday buzz show with us for years. One time, and we all signed off, you know, the news staff signed off on it. Jonathan decided to do what I consider a performance piece. And the word climate change was said from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock again and again and again. Just climate change, climate change, climate change.
Ooh.
I hated that show. But I really respect the fact that WORT did it, and I know what he was trying to do. But my God, was that irritating. I want to stop real quick and say one thing. We're talking about life-changing moments of listening to music or hearing someone maybe talk about an issue that is so central to our life. That isn't, 99% of the time, that's not what's happening on WORT. What's happening is those of us who like to listen to certain genres are having the chance from educated people who know those genres or know that topic and read a book or interviewing an author, they are giving us a chance to expand our knowledge. Or sometimes it's just on a Tuesday morning, I just want to hear folk music and I don't want to hear Send in the Clowns or some other bullshit that's been on 100 times, but I want to relax to a good folk music show. I want to relax on Wednesday afternoon with Elton, who is introducing me to a little more outside my bounds. I'm a jazz, I like some jazz, but there's a lot I don't like, and it expands. So you don't always have to talk about your experience as a listener and listening to other WORT shows being those life-changing moments. They don't happen all the time. And if we talk about in fundraising that you're giving because you have those moments, you're really narrowing your audience. But if you're talking about the experience of learning, of being somebody who wants to experience more out of the ordinary stuff, first of all, it's very complimentary to our listeners to think of themselves as that they're out of the ordinary. You know, that's a pleasant thing that you're putting across to them, that as somebody who has a lot of knowledge in certain areas, you're saying, I like having you on this journey with me because you're someone who's willing to step out of the very narrow confines of what is offered on the radio and take a chance. And I am so grateful to you for that, for being with me for that.
You're willing to put yourself in in the possible path of wonderment, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. You're smart enough to realize that it's not only a question of openness, it's a willingness to risk.
And
I agree with that 100%. And I've got a very short anecdote to share with you. I was listening to NPR, Wisconsin NPR, a couple of weeks ago, and they played Appalachian Spring. And I thought, wow, I think I've heard this about 139 times. And I'm going to send a little snotgram to the program director. And so I did. And I said, dear sir, I just heard Appalachian Spring again, and I've heard it 139 times this year. And can you please expand, have some consideration for your listeners and don't underestimate us. So a day later, he wrote back a very polite message and he said, dear Mr. Baker, thank you for writing. I appreciate your comments. No, in fact, we did not play that 139 times this year. We played it 138 times. And I said, okay, I exaggerated to make a point. My point was, please, expose us to some other things. And then that was the end of the cycle. But he did not get it.
Or at least play a Copeland string quartet, for Pete's sake. Just play the same guy doing something different.
There's
Duke Ellington's Sacred Works. Come on, you can.
Our goal, I don't believe our goal in 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hour shows is to shoot for that wonderment. I don't know there's a word for when you, so maybe it starts with an S, when you all of a sudden flooding through you are feeling everything. It's like the whole universe is part, and you're feeling the grass outside, and you're feeling, does anyone know the word? There's a word.
Synesthesia? Synesthesia?
No, it's more like this. It has to do with an idea of enlightenment and opening
flow.
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 Sounds
Right.
like flow to me. Yeah.
I'm
Thanks,
not thinking
Ellen.
of the
You're
specific
right
word,
on,
but
buddy.
while you're meditating and stuff, the goal is in some religions to hit that.
Satori.
Yes.
Satori.
Yes.
Bravo.
We're not. Our goal should not be, to me, to have. I felt Satori twice. It was the most amazing feeling I've ever had in my life, of actually feeling everything all at once. No, I wasn't drunk, I wasn't stoned, but I'd be willing to do either of those things to have that happen again. But my goal isn't to reach Satori again. I could spend the rest of my life trying to search for that state, which was so amazing.
Chasing the ghost. They call it chasing the ghost.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
But
That's a
my
lovely
goal most of the time when your listener is tuning into WORT isn't to have those moments of wonderment. They're tuning in because they enjoy what you're selecting. They enjoy you personally as a host. Do not forget the host connection. They enjoy getting to know you. I will remind you, you guys are the only ones that come into the bathroom with me now that my dog has died. When I sit and run a bath and put a radio on, it's WORT. You are in my bathroom. I live alone. You're in my car. You're in my living room. It is a very intimate relationship that radio has with people. That voice connection is so powerful. So I'm listening, forget the wonderment. I will say, if I talked about those moments of wonderment of Teresa, like you are talking about this particular experience, what I would say is you're very rarely going to have that. That happens very rarely, but I will say it's more likely to happen on WORT than anywhere else. And when it isn't happening, you're having the chance to expand and learn and grow. And that isn't something that's given very much to people nowadays, as far as I'm concerned. I feel a lot of stuff is being fed to us. A lot of stuff is coming from a particular viewpoint, is coming from a very, I mean, our genres are narrow, but within that narrowness is so much fullness that you don't get anywhere else. So we might have a reggae show, but within that reggae show is beyond, you know, No Woman, No Cry. Please don't, oh, I don't want to hear that anymore, even though it's a beautiful song. But I can turn into Frank, and if he's going to play No Woman, No Cry, there's going to be a very specific reason. There's probably going to be somebody besides, what's his name, singing the song, and he's going to explain why he's playing it.
Yeah. It's a high school marching band halftime show version.
Yeah. So I just want to say to you guys too, if you're going to mention that wonderment, which I think is a very powerful thing to talk about emotionally, to also talk about the very powerful thing that the chance to learn and expand well past the time where many of us think that we consider ourselves students or learners or whatever is what WORT gives. And I want to very briefly just talk about something that maybe you guys have heard about. There is an author called Jonathan Haidt, and he is the one that talks about the elephant and the rider. The elephant, you are the elephant and the rider. Your emotional part is the elephant, and the rider is the rational part. And decisions about whether to donate or not to somebody are very much made by the elephant. The emotional part of you makes a decision. Yes, I am a learner. Yes, I feel a relationship with this host. Yes, all of, you know, and then after we make the decision to donate, we go back and we look for a rational reason because we don't want to consider ourselves irrational. So the appeal of fundraising, my fundraising and good fundraising should always have the appeal to the emotional and the backup of the rational. So that's the part where you want to be. That's where talking about, you know, you listen because you learn, you listen, you know, you identify things that have emotional connections to people. So that's somewhat why the moments of wonderment are mentioned, because they're very emotional to us. They call up a lot of emotion, but you need to back that up with, like, you know, we want to keep presenting this to you, but 80%, you know, of our income depends on you. Now, here's a rational reason. I want to give, you've given me a rational reason, now I can give. So do any of you guys have any questions or illustrations that you want to give on how something like that? I used to work, you know, let me tell you where this really works. I work for the Dane County Humane Society. you want to talk about pictures of puppies and kittens and things that really connect with people emotionally, you get on the subject of their pets, you have got such an into their hearts. The fundraising, 8-year-olds have birthday parties and give their money raised at the birthday party to the Humane Society because of that emotional connection. Paul, I feel like maybe, do you have anything you want to offer? Anybody that I haven't heard from a bunch of you guys, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on fundraising or your questions.
Well, I'm just very grateful that Carol's going to be joining me on my show of the 19th. And this will be my first pledge wrap experience. But I really appreciate what we've heard today and discussed. I'm taking notes, and this has been helpful. So Susan, thank you for doing this. And I appreciate, we've had some offline chats too, and I think those have been very helpful too.
So I just want to, before everyone leaves, or for everyone that's listening to this on tape, I'm getting together. We're going to have a new sweatshirt for fall. That's our prime item. You're going to be sent a list of all of the the stuff that we're going to be offering, the pledge levels and stuff. You're going to be sent a list of all of the stuff that behind the scenes we're working on that we need money for. So we just created a new recording studio. I'm going to review some of the things we've done in the past 3 months since people gave to our summer drive. You're going to be getting your goal sheets for your goals, which I'm just going to say this because I hope other people are listening besides you guys. The goals, I have to set them. I have to have a set up, like, how much do I think we can bring in? So the goals are my best guess. They are not meant to be something that is make or break for your show. Every show is going to do more sometimes than I expect and less than sometimes than I expect. I can't control what the weather is the day you have your show, whether there's some big national thing that happens that everyone is paying attention to CNN or whatever for. I can't control, and you can't control any of those things. Your job as a host or a rapper is to do a good show, as you always do, appeal to our listeners, and it is not in your hands after that what happens. And if you can let go of that and not let yourself be attached to what results you are seeing during your show, but keep that same attitude of, I'm here to talk to you, I'm here, I'm chipper and I'm upbeat. Okay, don't use the word chipper. That's just weird. But you're feeling good about the fact that you're presenting good music and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and all the rest is gravy. Go ahead, Carol. I think you exemplify this. I can never tell when I'm listening to your show how good you're doing as far as how much money is coming in. And there are many shows that I can tell when people are struggling. I shouldn't be able to tell that just from listening on the radio that you're struggling.
Well, one thing I do is I do the Tony Castaneda thing, and I collect the money beforehand. And so if things get slow, I throw in $5, and it's, I just shake down everybody I know, and then I add some of my own. And, I have like $40 that I put out in $5 increments, and it's like, I give it a name. It's either the person who really gave it to me or somebody I know who's given in the past a first name. And I just tell the phone answerers, I'm going to be thanking some people and saying that they called in. I shook these people down before I came in. And it just makes it easier to keep things going and make it sound like I'm making progress, even if things get quiet, because things do get quiet.
You will have stretches where nobody is giving for 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time. And the ability, what's that If poem by Rudyard Kipling? Like, if you can weather this or do this, and the end conclusion is you're a man. But let's get rid of the you're a man. It's that you do not be dependent on what is happening with what is coming in. You can certainly use what's coming in to help generate more and more. The more pledges you get, the more pledges you get. The less pledges you get, the less pledges you get. It works both ways. There is a If nobody's calling in, Carol's thing and many people's thing of having some pre-pledges ahead of time, either your own or from other people, $5, it doesn't matter, we don't mention them on the air, can help start that wheel going of saying, we have a pledge from this person, thank you so much, blah, blah. It is on every show, on Rock and John, you know, Back to the Country, on every show that gets a lot of pledges, they can go 5-10 minutes with nothing. And then once that pledge ball starts rolling, everyone's calling in. It's like, yes, I love this show too. As they hear what comments people are making, they say, yes, I love that. Yes, that's me. And now you've given them a reason to give. So please consider reaching out, Matthew and Teresa and anyone else, reaching out to some of your friends and saying, even if it's $5, thank you, Paul. Even if it's $5, can I put you down for a $5 pledge to this show? You know, reach out on Facebook. You know, whatever. You don't have to do this all the time, but especially when you're starting, have some people that are willing to do this for you, or be willing to do it yourself, or just collect comments from anyone you know who listens to your show and put down reasons that they've given you for why they like it or why you should be on. Okay. I want to wrap this up, but just know you're going to be, Carol, go ahead.
Oh, two last things. Never say you didn't make your goal. Never say I made my goal. Can we make a little more? Because I'm a retired marketer, and if Susan doesn't hunt you down, I will. I don't think anyone here has ever said that, but those are the two things that I'd really encourage you never to do.
Okay, so if you have $100 goal and your show is an hour long, and I'm going to tell you that the average pledge, and I will always tell you, the average pledge generally is about $50. It's been constant during the 7 years I've been here. You need 2 people to call in. You will never, ever say the amount of money you need to raise during a show. That is forbidden, and telling how much someone gives to the show is forbidden. But if you divide it up and say, I need 2 pledges during the next hour, that's doable. For some of the big shows like Carol's show on Sunday mornings, if she were to say, wow, Susan has set our goal at $2,200 for a 3-hour show, do you know how many people would react by just sitting back and saying, that's insurmountable? But that's not what they do. What they do is divide the show up into 3 hours and say, for each hour, we need 8 people to call in during this next hour, or even 4 people to call in during this next half hour. They break it down into chunks that are doable, that people feel like, well, I can make a difference. 4 calls, I can be one of those 4. That's easy. You are allowed to say you made your goal only in the sense that Rock and John and a bunch of other people say at the end of their show, wow, we are really close. I'm not sure, but I think we're 1 or 2 maybe people away from making our goal. If you get a chance in this next minute or so to call or to go online, for sure, I think you can help us make it. People who are nowhere close to their goal say that at the end of their show. And they have people contribute at the last minute to it. But yeah, I will hunt you down if you ever say before your show is over that you've made your goal, because that is a death sentence for getting any more people to call. And it also affects the show after yours when you do that. Can I just ask each one of you to just say one thing at the end of this? I've been yapping through a lot of this, and if it's a question, if it's whatever, it'll help me help you. So if you have any criticism of how we're doing this, or if you have anything to offer that you think might be helpful, or if you just want to say thank you, but I'd really appreciate a thought that you might have on fundraising. I'm going to start with you, Elton, because the screen just rearranged itself and you're on the top now.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll start out with thank you for doing this. You know, it's been nice to chat about this. It's actually nice to interact with some of the other hosts, because we really don't have a forum where the hosts get together. And I was just, I've been thinking actually for weeks, months, that it would be nice if we figured out a way to do, maybe, I don't know if it's around genres or whatever, but to just some opportunity to get to know the hosts, right? Because I don't think we all have shows at different time slots, and we just don't have a chance to connect, right? And maybe even share our passion for music. Like, it'd be great if the jazz hosts could all get together once a month or whatever. So beyond that, I'll say that I tend to think of it as the whole thing is about sharing my experience with music. And listening for me is you had talked about a wonderment or a transcendent experience, or at least as an opportunity to have one. And even if it's not transcendent, it's an experience, a shared experience. And there's power in sharing listening as an activity. And I think I tend to think of every show as my opportunity to share music with folks that are listening. And I think that's what I like to talk about it. And if it does turn out to be transcendent for one or two folks, that's absolutely wonderful. Beyond that, in terms of fundraising, I'm learning, still learning. I probably make a million mistakes. I don't know. I can't remember if I've ever said a dollar amount, but I'm sure I must have at least once. Maybe not.
But you've never said we made our goal ever.
No, I've never said that, because I'm always hoping we can, do more than our goal, and I don't want people to stop just because they feel like we've gotten there. So anyway, thanks for putting this together, and I'll shut up and listen some more.
I'm just going to stop for a second. Elton, I think it's a great idea. I was shocked when I came here 7 years ago and found out that people, the back to the country people, didn't know, hadn't met, like people who had been here 20 years have not met each other as hosts. And I really would encourage the department, like Shali and Sybil, to set up more opportunities. When we're going to introduce something new, the new boards are coming. They're going to be here next year, and they are going to be a shitload of a learning experience, is what I've heard. To be able to have you guys on, and the people actually who are going to be operating the boards on, and having instead of just being sent a video of this is how you do it, to be able to go through that with you guys in short amount, like maybe 5 people at a time, and be able to get your feedback and hear like, no, I don't get that. Can you back up and do that? Or just Elton, to share music between yourselves as genres to help set that up, or to help set up any discussions of major change here at WORT. I feel like we just do not allow our volunteers to share things with each other, or to participate more actively in what we're doing. And I can say that because I'm not the one that's going to add to the workload other than the pledge drive. I don't have a lot to do with any of the technology or any of the other stuff around here. But, just know that on your own, Elton, you could contact the other jazz people and say, how do you feel about this? Like maybe we have a Sunday or whatever day where we all kind of weigh in, and maybe you're talking about equipment. Maybe you're talking about the soundboards. Maybe you're talking about the fact that that damn CD player in Combo B, I don't know which one, but there's one of them I know, just never seems to work. And what are your workarounds for these different things? Or if you're taking money, let's just be honest, maybe Carol doesn't do this, but I know a lot of people do. Maybe you're taking music from YouTube. What are the things to watch out for when you're grabbing that piece of music, that can get us into trouble, or that turns out to be, how do you get that on the air, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. Art, we haven't heard from you. I love your show.
Thank you.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on whatever you want to share with us.
Well, thank you. I'm still a newbie here at WORT, but I'm really glad to be aboard. And, it's getting on 2 years now, and I'm starting to catch the hang of things. I signed on because I've always wanted to get into radio again after a 30-year absence from it. And I thought it would be something that I'd like to do for years during my retirement, which is still impending. I'm still working, but at any rate, I signed on to WORT because I did not want Back to the Country to go away. I knew that Bill was moving, Bill and Bobby were moving away, and I was afraid it would disappear. And so I was glad to get in on one of those Wednesdays. And, you know, there's no way I'd be able to do 4 Wednesdays a month like Bill did. It's just a massive undertaking for, you know, the amount of effort he put into his show. And so I'm just glad to have this one Wednesday, this 3rd Wednesday of the month. I'll do whatever I can for the station, and I'll do whatever I can on this particular pledge drive show, and look forward to my upcoming retirement and to be able to get involved more with WRT, and being a presence at the station rather than doing all of my shows at home and uploading them and so on and so forth, which I think has been effective, but I'd rather get in front of the mic a bit more. And so that's my goal for the future. But you know, I'll stop talking here. I just wanted to say thank you, Susan, for this presentation, and thank you to the other hosts for your inspiration. It's been great, and I hope we do more of these Zoom meetings.
Art, you have a ready-made story of how you were attached to Back to the Country. I will hope that, I think you're on the schedule for this drive, right?
Yes, I am.
I would hope to hear, when I'm listening to you, you talk about the pleasure that Bill and Bobby brought to you, and the pleasure
Yes.
you received from Back to the Country. And the fact that when you heard they were leaving these are all different spots that you can break up, but that to hear that they were leaving, part of you said, this can't end now.
That's right.
And what motivated you to get in there and say, I might not be Bill Malone, but I have things that I know I can share that will help, that people might want to hear, who are Back to the Country fans. So to share break up your personal stuff and share it, and allow people to hear some of the feelings that you have for the show, for Bill and Bobby, for the music, you know, that motivated you. I would stay away from talking about pre-recording.
Right.
That's just outside of, like, no,
right.
It's not a feeling, it's not a, you know, but to say, I perfectly would love to hear you say something about you're looking forward to your retirement as an opportunity to even get more involved with the music and more involved with WORT, and hope to make your show even better when you have more time to devote. You know, you're already, many of you, I know, listening to 6 hours or more, searching for new music all week long. And we're just going to contribute to your obsession when you retire, Art, with you spending 20 hours or more listening to that music. But that's something that I, you know, take for granted from WORT hosts, that they are spending so much of their time immersed in things that they love, that they can then bring to me, because I don't have time just, you know, when I go on YouTube, I'm just dancing around. What was that? There's one thing where you can do a piece of music streaming where you can do thumbs up or thumbs down to the piece of music, and then they change the algorithm based on your thumbs up or thumbs down. What is that? That's one of
That's Pandora.
Pandora. I got myself in a hole with Pandora. I would listen, I would be like, nope, thumbs down, thumbs down, thumbs down. Eventually, there were only like 6 different musicians that Pandora would offer me. The narrowness of my thumbs downing so many pieces of music was so, like, I got off of Pandora. I'm like, God, no matter what I pick, it all comes down to like 3 different, you know, genre, you know, pieces. So that's where WORT filled the need that I didn't even know I had. Well, I did know, because I was listening to WORT at the same time. I thought Pandora would augment WORT, and it didn't at all. Because what we think we want and what we actually enjoy are so different. But anyway, Art, I hope to hear more personal stuff from you, and inviting the listeners to say, I guess, like you, nobody wanted to see Bill and Bobby go. Nobody wanted to hear the end of Back to the Country.
No, the story you told about crying when you heard a particular piece, I think I do that at like every Friday night, you know, when I'm listening to music with my wife. And so we're discovering new music all the time. And you know, I share it on WRT whenever I get a chance on Back to the Country.
Great. Carol, did you want to say anything else?
No, just thank you so much. If anyone is looking for a pledge wrapper, if my schedule works, I'm willing to join you. Just, I think you all have beautiful programs, and I'm sure you have listeners who are willing to pony up.
Okay, I don't want to. Carol is always willing. I'm going to be the gatekeeper for you, Carol, because
Okay.
I really want to encourage our regular host who have never gone outside their own show. Carol does it every single pledge drive. She is on at least 2 other shows pledge wrapping for other people, at least 2 other shows. And I'm not going to ask this from you all the time, but during this next pledge drive, I really need our host to step up and be willing to consider going on a different show to pledge wrap, because we just don't have the people. And I'm not talking to Marcus or Teresa. Do not try and go on shows other than your own when you are just, you know, basically I want you to have training wheels on for a little while and not be that. But thank you for that offer, Carol. And I know you're already doing something with Paul. And I also think you're doing something with Perry.
I don't know. Perry hasn't talked to me. I don't know.
Well, it turned out that nobody had told Perry that there was actually the dates of the pledge drive, so he didn't even know.
I hope I'm in town. I'll do it if I can.
If you're not, then I'll find someone else.
Okay, I'll follow up with you afterwards.
Unless you hear from me, you're not with him.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Matthew, is there any questions that you still have, or is there something that you feel? Just know there's there's more material coming.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you and Teresa just to the kind of the tip of the fundraising iceberg that will help you have a very good fundraising show without going into the extreme details of, as you get more comfortable with fundraising, there's little tweaks you can make. You don't need those tweaks right now. I feel like you need the fundamentals, which is on a 2-page document, and you're set. And I will make sure, Teresa, I understand Jane is going to be joining you.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, that's correct.
Matthew, I will make sure you have someone who is very good at fundraising on your show with you, so you can relax a little, okay?
Yeah, no worries. No, this has been really helpful. I've been taking notes here too. So yeah, beyond the sheet that you shared, all this has been great. So I feel ready as I can be, I guess.
That's reassuring. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really nice to have new hosts participating in this, which doesn't often happen. Teresa, is there anything, Matt or Teresa, are there any questions that you have that kind of hung out and you've at one point and then we moved on to another topic, or anything?
I just had a question if we can buy a hoodie.
All right, I'm going to tell you guys something. We switched from trying to order all the crap ahead of time to ordering just based on what people donate and pledge for during pledge drives. And it's made a huge difference in the overstock. Right now, I have overstock going back 7 years. I have hoodies, t-shirts, long sleeve tees left
Oh, cool.
over.
Okay.
We have them all together. We still have to do an inventory of them. You guys will be able to, as volunteers, have a crack. The short sleeve shirts are going to be $10. The long sleeve shirts are going to be $15, and the hoodies are going to be $20. Just so I recap. You will have a crack at all of those. Now, as to the new item, which I think is super cool, which is a hoodie, I basically there's two. At all the other nonprofits I've been to, the volunteer department creates volunteer gear, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats for volunteers to wear. And it says maybe WORT and the word volunteer on it someplace, maybe on the back. And that's for volunteers. And then the stuff that I create is for donors. So certainly you may pledge for a shirt, but what I'm trying to say is you don't get a break on it.
Okay, sure.
So if the hoodie cost $125 or $150, that's the pledge level. It's the same pledge level for the volunteers as it is for the donors, because it isn't a volunteer item, it is a donor item.
Okay.
I have been encouraging our new volunteer coordinator, to start producing volunteer stuff where you guys can specifically order a long sleeve tee or something, and all we're doing is covering cost. So for you, a hoodie might be $25, and it will say something about WORT on the front, and it'll have the word volunteer on the back.
Okay.
So that's where I hope to move it. But there has been a lot of pressure when I got here from volunteers saying, well, I want to purchase this as a volunteer. And it's because we haven't made clear, this is volunteer gear, this is donor stuff.
Okay.
So the good news is I have tons of leftover gear, and I will be getting that information out to you, and you will be able to purchase it at a big discount from what the donors had. Hopefully the volunteer department will step up and start producing stuff specifically for volunteers that will be cool and that you'll be interested in wearing. If you wait till after the drive, often there's leftover stuff for the next drive that I'm willing to, but you're taking the chance of having the size or something not absolutely being gone. You know, the skull hats are going to be gone. You know, the new glow in the dark, they just came in. And I already know that they will sell out during the fall drive, just based on all the people that have contacted me saying, I missed the summer drive. It happened in a week. And then I heard about these skull hats and I want one. And I've already got, you know, I've been telling everyone, Carol, watch out, you and Paul, that Monday morning show is going to be skull hat happy. Because I told them that's when our pledge drive starts. If you absolutely want to make sure you have a hat, that's the very first time you can pledge for it is at 7:30 on Monday, September 19th. So don't be surprised, okay? And I have told people, people to have more people on pledge takers based on that. So you will have more people answering phones. I think we've gone through everyone. Look forward to more stuff, people. It's going to be dribbling in, but I'm going to try and have a major one of letting you know all of the things we're offering in the pledge levels, what equipment and changes we've made since 3 months ago, what's new. A new recording studio is one of the main things, but there are some other things. What we need the money for going forward, what difference they can make. All of this stuff I'm telling you are rational reasons why people might want to donate to WORT, that listeners make up this much of our income, 80%. But remember, it is the emotional feeling, it is the emotion, it is your personal connecting with audiences, your emotional connection with people that those rational reasons will hang on. So you talking about a piece of music or something, you doing those personal things is going to be what makes the difference. And it can lead a show from doing well because people love the music and like the host, even if the host can't articulate fundraising very well, to doing really well because you're maximizing everything by introducing that element that says this is what we need. And I want to thank all of you sincerely for all you do. I listen to every single one of your shows. There's only a couple I don't listen to, and you know, there's always going to be a few that just don't resonate with us. But I will say the more I give it a chance, I hated tomatoes when I was younger. They're now one of my favorite foods. And that's that incremental moving us a little bit that you guys do during shows. You know, I hated, well, I will say I hated Miles Davis' Bitches Brew, and to this day, I still hate Miles Davis's Bitches Brew. I just did not get along far enough along the way, but I think that someday before I die, I'm going to enjoy that record, and it's going to be due to our host moving me along in my appreciation of jazz till I get there. So thank you so much for coming. This will be a recording. I don't think any of you guys want to hear it again, but we will be offering it to other hosts and rappers who want to tune in. This is not the usual, just so you know, this is not the usual pledge wrapping webinar. You would be much more likely just to hear the facts of what is going to be different about the fall one. But we can certainly do something like this next time, a little more in advance, working with different pledge wrapping experts to take a different host, to take a different part and talk about what they do, that I think would be very valuable. So blah, blah, blah. I'm going to shut up, but I'm so grateful for all of you turning up. I've learned stuff during this, and I'm grateful.
Thank you, Susan. We appreciate you
Thanks,
putting this
Susan.
together.
Thank you.
Susan, thank you, everybody. You all are the best.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Take care.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.